Welcome, everybody, to the Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest podcast. I'm Drew, and we are going to talk about some sports today. I got another big show planned for us for this bye week for the Seahawks. Just because the Seahawks have a bye doesn't mean I got a lot of stuff to talk about. There's always stuff to talk about in the world of sports, and we're going to talk about some of it today. We're going to talk about the No Fun League and how they keep penalizing players for celebrating on the field. We're going to talk about how Edgar Martinez should make the Hall of Fame. And, of course, we're going to talk about NFL Week 5. I'm happy to do that. We're going to go over picks for this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. But first, we're going to get into Week 5 recap in the NFL. It was another fun week in the NFL. The Vikings are now the only undefeated team in the NFL, which if you had me, at the beginning of the year say, Drew, which team is going to be the last undefeated team? I probably wouldn't have picked the Vikings. But, that just goes to show you what you can do with a young defense that has a lot of talent and a good enough quarterback to get the job done. Because, that's what Sam Bradford is. He does have that high ceiling where he can, make some plays. He was a first overall draft pick by the Rams in 2010. So he definitely has some of that potential. But he's, just doing enough to win right now with that defense, which is perfectly fine. And the Minnesota Vikings have overcome a lot of adversity, too. You've got injuries all over the place. I saw this week that they had another offensive lineman go down, and then they picked up Jake Long, who is a free agent, and they're rolling with him. So it should be really interesting for them going forward to see who else goes down or how they can overcome adversity going forward. They don't play the Seahawks this year except for most likely in the playoffs, so that's a lucky one for them, and we'll see how long they can stay undefeated for. Another fun thing that happened this week was the Chargers found another way to lose. They have continued to lose games in the fourth quarter in just hilarious fashion. Phillip Rivers, quarterback for the Chargers this week, was actually seen, somebody read his lips and he said, "We're the bad news Bears." He said that on the sideline. And for those of you that don't know, the Bad News Bears are this rough and tumble Little League team who are coached by a ex-criminal drunk man. So that'll just go to show you a little bit about how Phillip Rivers thinks the Chargers are doing this year. They were going for a field goal, and they muffed the snap and lost the game this week. So just another way to lose for the Chargers at late in the game. They've blown up. I mean, it's rough to be a Chargers fan right now, and I don't know, at what point in the season does that get in your head? Does that seep into your culture, and you're thinking, well, how are we going to lose this game this week? If you're Phillip Rivers saying you're the Bad News Bears, that is not a good sign for Chargers fans. The Falcons toppled the Broncos, which wasn't as surprising as a lot of people thought. The Falcons have a really high-powered offense right now, so they've got a lot of stuff going on, good for them. And the Broncos' defense just didn't quite bring it as much as they needed to win that game. It doesn't help that their quarterback, Trevor Siemian, didn't play. It was Paxton Lynch that started this week, and anytime you have a rookie quarterback, I don't care. The difference between a quarterback who didn't start his first season and is starting his sophomore season and it's his first starts, that's a big jump. But it's nowhere near as big a jump as if you were playing in college one year, the very next year you're in the NFL and you're starting in an NFL game. So big jump for Paxton Lynch. He kind of showed his rookiness at times, getting out of the pocket too much, not throwing it away when he needed to throw it away. He didn't have the timer in his head that he needed to not get sacked. The Falcons had something like 6 sacks or a crazy amount of sacks for a team that doesn't have that good of a pass rush, at least in the early parts of this early season. So the Falcons got a win from them, and they're coming to Seattle this week to play the Seahawks, who are coming off a bye. So it should be a really interesting matchup there. On Monday Night Football, that was another fun one to watch. If you don't know the story of the Bucs kicker, Robert Aguayo, well, he was the first rookie kicker to be drafted in the second round in 35-plus seasons. And there is a reason why you don't draft a kicker high. Kickers really aren't that they are valuable, but they're not as valuable as you need to draft them that high. Having a great kicker is super important, but Robert Aguayo isn't a great kicker. He's an awful kicker. He's inside his head. He was missing kicks left and right the whole Monday Night Football game. He did redeem himself at the end when he hit one at the end to have him win, but I think he's something like 4 for 8 or something on the season. 50% field goal kicker does not cut it in the NFL. If you see a kicker miss 1, 2, 3 kicks in a few games, your fans are starting to get really upset with that kicker, and that's generally like a 70% kicker, which also doesn't cut it in the NFL. But 50%, and you spent a second-round pick on him? That is a lot to stomach for Buccaneers fans. Maybe they could have used that pick elsewhere. To give you a little bit of perspective, people that the Seahawks have gotten in the second round, Frank Clark. They got Tyler Lockett in the second round too. It was crazy. The second round is absolutely full of all sorts of positions where you can get all sorts of NFL talent and get starters on your roster that aren't a kicker. But, sometimes that happens. The Jaguars drafted a punter before Russell Wilson in the 2012 draft. So that just goes to show you that not everybody knows what's going on. And thank God for John Schneider and Pete Carroll. So there are some pretty intriguing matchups coming up this week, and I really wanted to focus real quick on the Seahawks-Falcons matchup, of course, just because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It is the best defense in the NFL, fewest yards allowed, versus the best offense, most yards gained. And it's Pete Carroll versus Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator of the Seahawks before he went over to the Falcons. That was the second defensive coordinator in a row to be tapped from the Seahawks organization because our defense has been so good these past few years. And it's going to be Richard Sherman against Julio Jones, and probably some Deshaun Shedd against Julio Jones too. Julio Jones, the same Julio Jones that caught for 300 yards 2 weeks ago. So there's a lot of intrigue in this matchup for sure. I'm excited for the battles. I'm excited to see what our offensive line can do coming off a bye with Jermaine Ifedi. He got his first game under his belt. Now he's going forward, to see what they can do against this, I guess, resurgent pass rush of the Falcons, who got a bunch of sacks this week against the Broncos. It'll be really interesting to see how Russell Wilson is and if he's moving around more and if Jimmy Graham can remain as excellent as he's been these last 2 starts. There's a lot of good matchups, and it's going to be a lot of fun afternoon game in CenturyLink Field. Dan Quinn coming back. I think those Falcons are going to have a harder time than they think. We have seen time and time again in Seattle where high-powered offenses come against our defense, and they don't look so high-powered. The most obvious example, of course, is going to be the most prolific offense in the history of the NFL, which was the 2013 Denver Broncos led by Peyton Manning, who walked into Super Bowl 48 and got absolutely destroyed by our defense. So there's other examples besides that one. That's, of course, the most prominent example of a high-powered offense going against our defense. Now, is our defense the same as it was in 2013? I think it might be a little bit better. You got these guys coming off of, all these years together, coming off some adversity. We got Michael Bennett. It's a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of cohesion, a lot of veteran, but still young Seahawks in that defense. And, you got guys like Frank Clark, who's young. You've got Jerron Reed, who should be getting better and should play in this game. So there's a lot of intrigue in this matchup. I'm really excited for the Falcons to come into Seattle. And, I'm hungry for some more Seattle football after the bye week. It always feels so long waiting for Seattle football again. So I'm going to transition a little bit into one of my 2 topics of the week this week. I'm going to talk about Edgar Martinez and Seattle Mariners baseball a little bit. Now, what prompted this topic for me is there was a player for the Boston Red Sox that retired this year, and he played his last game a couple days ago, and that was David Ortiz, or as a lot of people know him, Big Papi. And the reason why I want to talk about Big Papi and Edgar Martinez is because these are really 2 of the defining American League DHs. Like, these guys are DHs. They didn't really play in the field. Of course, you can say Big Papi played first sometimes, and of course he did, but he was a DH, and that's the way that he really made his mark, and the same with Edgar Martinez. So with Big Papi, he had his big farewell tour. He had an amazing walk-off season. He had an extremely productive season, and everyone's talking about, like, as soon as he's Hall of Fame eligible, they can't wait to get him in Cooperstown, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun when Big Papi goes into the Hall of Fame. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what about Edgar Martinez? Do you know the award that Big Papi has won, the DH award, for the best DH in the league? You know who it's named after? Edgar Martinez. You know who's not in the Hall of Fame? Edgar Martinez. He's got a freaking award named after him, and you can't put him in the Hall of Fame? Now, he's gotten more and more votes ever since they kind of flushed the old writers' votes down the drain just a little bit. It's still not near close enough. Griffey made us pitch for him in his Hall of Fame speech. You had people there when Griffey was getting inducted that were chanting, "Edgar, Edgar." And I was like, yes, get Edgar in here. Of course, I was weeping tears of joy because Griffey was getting in, but that was a slam dunk no-brainer. But I really think that Edgar Martinez too. Now, that's a little bit of bias, but I went and I got some numbers. So David Ortiz has the edge, and the reason why he's going to get in is because of his postseason success. He's part of that Boston franchise that won 3 World Series after breaking the curse of the Bambino, where Boston hadn't won a championship in 100 years. So in 2004, they won their first championship, and a lot of it was due to David Ortiz just being one of the most clutch hitters. I mean, more than once in their World Series runs, most recently in 2013, where it's just, he is just clutch, and he is a postseason master, which is all well and good, and should, get some traction when you're thinking about the Hall of Fame. But you got to think about Edgar Martinez's opportunities too. What did he do in the postseason? I mean, I think back to 1995. Now, I was a wee lad and don't actually remember 1995 when it happened, but I do. I've seen it. I've seen all the history. I've watched the game several times. Clearly the game where he hits the double and Griffey comes around, and the famous Dave Niehaus call that everybody plays all the time, and you see it on postseason hype commercials, and it's like, this was the greatest moment in the Mariners franchise to date. So there are definitely clutch moments for Edgar Martinez too. And the other numbers that I went and got are what I think are the most important for a DH. The one that glares out to me that's just screaming in my face is on-base percentage. So when you're a DH, your goal is to obviously get hits, get RBIs, get on base. How you get runs in the major leagues is on-base percentage. And it really can equate down to that stat in a lot of ways as far as how you can get runs in Major League Baseball. David Ortiz's on-base percentage career, over a 20-year career, 380, which is good. That's a good on-base percentage. To carry over a 20-year career as a DH and have the power numbers he did, that's good. Edgar Martinez's was 418 over an 18-year career. That's better. That's better by like 40 points. That's not a small margin of better. That's better. Where David Ortiz obviously has the edge is in home runs. He hit 541 home runs, which puts him way up on the list as far as all-time home run hitters. And Edgar Martinez only hit 309. But here's the other thing that screams out to me on the page is on-base percentage plus slugging. And slugging is, how they track when you hit the ball with power, is just neck and neck. Even with his power numbers, even with all those home runs he hit over his 20-year career, his his on base percentage plus slugging is 931. Edgar Martinez's is 933. And it's not like he didn't even hit home runs. He hit 309 home runs. That's not a low amount of home runs for a hitter. So you hit with power, you hit for good on base percentage. You're a leader of a team. You basically are part of the team that saved baseball in Seattle, and you can't get into the Hall of Fame. What I'm saying is, if David Ortiz makes it into the Hall of Fame, which he will, Edgar Martinez better be there first. He better be there first. You're going to win an award named after a guy. You're going to go into the Hall of Fame, and he's not. If you've got an award named after you, you're in the Hall of Fame. He paved the way for the modern DH so David Ortiz could be a DH. Really, nobody had really done it until Edgar Martinez did it. Nobody did it. So explain to me, baseball writers, explain to a young Mariners fan who grew up watching this guy be the best right-handed hitter really you can ever see. Explain to me why he's not in the Hall of Fame. Go ahead. I'll wait. I'll sit here. Send me a letter, baseball writers. You can write. My goodness. Put him in the Hall. So now that I'm done with that basically ginormous rant about Edgar Martinez, which I don't apologize for whatsoever, I'm going to rant about something else. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here and talk about the NFL. And a lot of what players are complaining about and a lot of fans are complaining about is the ridiculous flags that are appearing for supposedly unsportsmanlike conduct and taunting. So NFL, short for No Fun League, has been throwing a record number of flags for touchdown celebrations, first down celebrations, sack celebrations. Basically, when a player is excited and they do something, they're getting a flag, and a lot of the time there's a fine that follows. Now, I don't know if the NFL is exactly hurting for cash with the way that ratings are in the NFL. It's just a ginormous corporate monster, which is a nonprofit company, and we'll have to talk about that sometime. But it's insane to me how clearly a thing that would drive those ratings numbers are being just absolutely thrown out the door by the NFL. They're really really nailing down on it. And it makes me question the overall morality of the NFL. What's the compass here? What's the moral compass? Because it doesn't make any sense. Now, you've got domestic violence, which I think should come with a heavy penalty, which in the NFL, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. And it depends on the player. You've got drug abuse, specifically marijuana, which I don't know why the NFL cares about whether or not the players are smoking marijuana, maybe because it's federally illegal, but it's not something that they should police so heavily, where you get a year-long suspension for marijuana and 4 games for domestic violence. Like, that blows my mind. And just across the NFL, it's like, what kind of organization do you want to be? Because you have to choose. And some things, they come down hard. Some things, they come down easy. Well, their most recent target is the celebrations, specifically Antonio Brown. So Antonio Brown is, if you play fantasy football, he's the number 1 fantasy wide receiver. I don't know if he's actually statistically that currently, but he's really good. And was drafted number 1 in a lot of snake drafts this year, which is kind of a first for wide receivers, because he scores touchdowns a lot. And when you're Antonio Brown is, of course, on Dancing with the Stars and is a big, basically celebrity wide receiver. And so when Antonio Brown scores a touchdown, he likes to dance. And sometimes he likes to dance a little promiscuously. Speaking of the first game of the season where he was twerking. If you don't know what twerking is, I'm not going to explain it to you. And he, kind of does his hip gyrations and all that kind of stuff, and he gets flagged for it all the time. And that's one that I have less of a problem with. Okay, NFL, if you want to take a stance on sexually explicit dances, first of all, you got to define it. It's got to really be that. I mean, if you got your families watching, you don't want them to see that, that's fine. I understand that. Okay, fine. Come down on that. Fine that. But it seems to extend and really have no definitive parameters. They also include it to be what they call mock acts of violence and things like that. So you can't shoot a gun or throw a grenade. Josh Norman made a tackle and shot a bow and arrow, and that was considered shot an imaginary bow and arrow. So he just basically took an arrow out and pretend to pull it back and shoot it, and that's an act of violence. So again, fine and penalty. Why? Tell me why. What? That's fun. That's fun to watch. Wow. And it's not going to offend anybody. You see, are you kidding me with this? The way culture is now, you can look 4 feet and get hit in the face by some manner of sexualized something or violent something, and if they're not seeing it on the NFL, they're going to see it somewhere else. So if you're going to take a stand, fine. I respect it. Take that stand, but don't be wishy-washy. Don't be like, okay, you can dance, but no, you can't dance that way. It doesn't make sense. This is not for you to police in this way. So really, and it might sound like my thoughts are convoluted, and they are a little bit. It's like, what? Because it's so confusing. The entire premise of what's bad. Tell me, like I said, the morality's broken. Show me where it is. Stick to it. If you want to get your fines. But my goodness, let the boys play. Let them play. Let them throw their fists in the air and shoot imaginary bows and arrows. And my favorite celebration, and it's like everybody's, is the soup, the spaghetti and the soup, or they pretend to have a bowl in their hand and they pretend to have a spoon or a fork and they just feed me, and they move their hand back and forth, and it's pretty funny. It's like they're eating cereal or something. I don't know, soup, cereal, spaghetti, all of it, none of it. I don't know. Just pick, NFL. Just pick. So this is going to be a little bit shorter of a podcast, I think, because once again, I have no questions to answer. Remember, you can send your questions to @Neutral Zone NW on Twitter or email, because email's fun. Neutral Zone Infraction NW @gmail.com. Or you can comment on this video, this Facebook post, wherever you're seeing it. Comment. I'll see it. I'll find it. I'll answer it. It'll be a great time. You guys got to have a question. You want to hear me make funny voices at whatever? I don't know. You can do it. But now we are going to move on to the point of the podcast where I pick games that haven't happened yet. But first, we are going to recap what I did last week. I did so good last week. If you guys are listening, I did so good. I went 10-4. That really brought up my lifetime win percentage. I'm 36-25 all time, even with the 7-9 week. Ugh, that was gross. For a 0.59 win percentage. It's going to keep going up. I got some good picks this week. I'm going to get right into them. Week 6 in the NFL starts Thursday Night Football. Broncos at Chargers. This is going to be a fun one, I think. The Chargers, I think, will find a way to lose in the fourth quarter, which they seem to have really perfected at this point in their season so far. I mean, they, like I was saying before, they have found a way to lose in almost every single game they played. They won one game. The other games they've lost in the fourth quarter. All of them. It's incredible. How do you lose in the fourth quarter? It's just... being a fan and watching your team lose in the fourth quarter is like the worst thing ever. The Seahawks did it for a stretch at the beginning of last year, and it was no fun. Let me tell you what. The Broncos are going to come in and take one from the Chargers, even with Paxton Lynch, but I'm looking forward to see Trevor Siemian back. I like Trevor Siemian. So, Broncos, Thursday Night Football. All right. On Sunday, we've got Eagles at Redskins. Now, the Eagles are no longer undefeated. They got beat last week. Carson Wentz threw his first pick, even though it was not a bad pick. It was like a desperation throw at the end of the game, and it was really close to his receiver. I mean, he was really close to his receiver. It wasn't like a rookie pick or anything crazy. The kid can ball. He is good. Carson Wentz is good. And Jared Goff for the Rams is still on the sidelines, and Carson Wentz is good. It's pretty fun to watch, I got to tell you. But they're playing a divisional game at Washington, the Redskins. It's a tough divisional matchup. And, the Redskins pulled one out against Baltimore in Baltimore last week. So, a lot of things can and will happen in the NFL. But I'm going with the favorites here, which is going to be the Eagles because Carson Wentz can ball. I love young QBs that play well. He reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson, actually. So there's a good comparison for you, except for he doesn't really run like Russell Wilson, doesn't really look like Russell Wilson. Kind of plays different than Russell Wilson. But other than that, the way he wins, the way he plays, smart kid, reminds me of Russell Wilson. Eagles, take one from the Redskins. Next game, we got Jaguars at Bears. This one's harder for me. Brian Hoyer's looking a little bit better as the backup QB. I don't know if and when Jay Cutler's coming back. I haven't seen or heard anything about that still. But he played a lot better in his last game. So that was a good one for them. Of course, right when Brian Hoyer starts to play well is when you got to get worried if you're rooting for a team that Brian Hoyer's on. Because if, stats and the past have anything to do with anything, it's bound to all come crashing down sooner rather than later. With that being said, I'm picking the Bears in this one. Even though I'm all high on the Jaguars and they've been playing well, I think that the Bears are going to win at home in this game. Next game, we've got Steelers at Dolphins. Man, I'm lucky I picked Big Ben as my QB in fantasy. It's been great so far. He's been really good. I benched him the week that he threw 5 touchdown passes, but that was stupid of me. I sure learned my lesson, though. And, the Steelers are just a really high-powered offense. Of course, they looked to struggle early last week, but I think that they pulled it out really well, and Big Ben ended up throwing for 4 touchdowns, and it was a good game for him overall. I'd definitely like the Steelers over the Dolphins here, just because the Dolphins aren't that good. They have a really good head coach, though. I like Adam Gase as their head coach. I think he's going to make some changes. I think he's going to make some shakeups coming next year. He was asked by reporters at the end of this last game that they lost if and when he ever thought he'd take Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback, out. And he's like, I'm leaving him in no matter what this year. He's a starting quarterback. But part of his one of his contract stipulations for being the Dolphins head coach, he's a rookie head coach this year, is he has control over who the quarterback is going to be after this first year. He can get rid of Ryan Tannehill if he wants to, which I think he will end up probably doing because Ryan Tannehill, while good, that's all he really is good. He's okay, and their defense isn't good enough. Just too many high-paid players that are underperforming for them to really be excellent. So it should be interesting with the Dolphins going forward. I think they'll end up looking quite a bit better in the years to come, as long as the ownership doesn't get rid of Adam Gase too quickly, and maybe draft some good people. But in this game, Steelers at Dolphins, definitely picking the Steelers going into Miami. Next game, Browns at Titans. It's the revolving door of quarterbacks in Cleveland. It's crazy. They used Terrell Pryor, who's technically a wide receiver, at quarterback last week. He came into the NFL as a quarterback, but then sucked so bad they switched him to wide receiver, and now he's playing well. Because Cody Kessler went down, and I don't know what just it's crazy to me how they're just so unfortunate. That's all I can use to describe their team. They're an unfortunate team who unfortunate things happens to. It's just crazy to me. Next game, and of course I obviously pick the Titans to win. just so obviously. I'm not picking the Browns all year. I swear I won't. Next game, we got Bengals at Pats. Tom Brady came back this week. He lit a fire under the Browns, of course, but he did not look rusty at all. He threw for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, all of them to Martellus Bennett. He's thrown to receivers he's never seen before. He's throwing all over the field. Rob Gronkowski caught for 100 yards. Ben Hogan, their wide receiver, caught for a bunch. Martellus Bennett caught for 3 touchdowns. The dude is good. He's good. And the Patriots are hard to beat with him in there. It'll be interesting to see, how long Tom Brady goes in his career. It should be really interesting to see. But I can tell you he's not retiring tomorrow. So when the Bengals come into Foxborough, that's a rough one for Andy Dalton. Definitely the Pats over the Bengals. All right, next game we got Niners at Bills. The Bills are on a little bit of a hot streak. They beat the Rams last week. They beat the Patriots 2 weeks ago. So I think they're on a 3-game win streak right now. They're playing some good ball. And the 49ers just announced that they are going to sit Blaine Gabbert and start Colin Kaepernick, which is sort of like sitting down for a nice dinner and deciding, no, I don't want green beans. I want canned peas. It's the same thing. It's green mush coming out of a can. Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert are the same quarterback. Just wait and see. It's not going to be. It's not going to be any better. They're a low grade passer who can run, and that's all they are. And the reason why Colin Kaepernick had so much success, I remember when they were comparing Colin Kaepernick to Russell Wilson. It's like, who's better? And all the experts were like, oh, Colin Kaepernick is clearly better. He's going to the Hall of Fame. That was after he shredded Green Bay in a couple of playoff games with his legs. Because really, not many people had seen a quarterback run like that. I mean, there was Michael Vick, of course, but it hadn't been like the read option sort of deal, like was kind of really brought to the forefront in that group of quarterbacks there. So people game plan for it now. They know about it. I mean, you're spying the quarterback. You got a fast as heck middle linebacker ready to wallop you if you decide to go anywhere. And Colin Kaepernick just can't throw that well. So you're getting the same thing for the same thing. It's not going to help the Niners. They're going to be in Buffalo. I like the Bills to win. Next game, we've got Ravens at Giants. Odell Beckham Jr. got his act together a little bit. This last game, he got a touchdown. I told you about the kicking net thing where he punched a kicking net and got hit by it. And this week he goes up to the kicking net and he kisses it and he hugs it after he scored his touchdown. Everyone in New York was like, Odell Beckham Jr. has the worst attitude I've ever seen. And a lot of that is true. He is a distraction to his team in some extent, but it seems like he's gotten, a little bit better. He's having a little bit more fun. So that'll be good for him. But, with the Ravens fired their offensive coordinator. So there's not like a lot of hope the week after you fire your offensive coordinator to get that much better. Of course, this year, it seems like the week after you fire your offensive coordinator, you get a lot better. The Bills did it, and they had a lot more success the next week. But Mark Trestman of the Ravens got fired this week, and the Giants are at home. I like the Giants in this game. Next game, we've got Rams at Lions. So the Rams are going into Detroit. They've, obviously looked better, even though they lost to the Bills this last week. And I love having a bye week for the Seattle Seahawks. You're technically behind in the standings because of a tie break, and then they lose, so you're alone in first place on a day where you're sitting on your couch watching football. That's got to feel great for the Seahawks to be alone at the top right now because the Rams lost to the Bills. I think they bounced back this week, though, in Detroit. The Lions really aren't that good. It'll test their secondary for sure with some of the weapons that the Lions have and Matt Stafford. But I think that the Rams will go into Detroit and get a win. Next game, we've got Panthers at Saints. Panthers didn't look great with Derek Anderson, who is the backup quarterback. Last week, I'm like, I don't know who the backup quarterback for Carolina is. The answer is I did know, I just forgot. Derek Anderson is probably going to end up playing again. It really depends on the concussion protocol with Cam Newton, whether or not he'll go. Doesn't matter, I don't think. Going into New Orleans, I like Drew Brees and the Saints. Next game, we've got Chiefs at Raiders. The Raiders have been playing really well. They're 4-1. They're leading their division. I told you they're going to be good. Raiders are looking good. Jack Del Rio has got them playing. He's changed the culture there. And for a lot of NFL teams, it's all about culture. It's not all about culture, but it really, really helps. And it's kind of where the foundations are built is the culture that your team has, which Pete Carroll has really, really exemplified that in the Seahawks more than anybody I've ever seen. Obviously, we have the best culture. Players come in and they're like, oh, man, you guys have so much fun, and you're not micromanaged and all this kind of stuff. And Pete Carroll's a supporter, and culture really has a lot to do with how a locker room is, and the locker room has a lot to do with whether or not your team is going to win. So I really credit Jack Del Rio for changing the culture around for the Raiders. But, for some reason, I've got this feeling in my gut that the Chiefs are going to come in and take a win. And a lot of the reason why is that defense. I think if they punish Derek Carr, if maybe he throws a few too many interceptions to their secondary, I think that they definitely have the potential to go in there and take a win. It's a divisional game. It's important for the Chiefs to win. I think they go in and beat the Raiders in Oakland. Next game, we've got Cowboys at the Packers. Now, the Packers looked a lot better at home this last week. Eddie Lacy was really doing a really excellent job running the football, kind of looking almost a little bit like Marshawn Lynch running out there, which is really his potential. And they came out with a good win last week. The Cowboys are also looking pretty good with Dak Prescott at the helm still, winning again last week, and Ezekiel Elliott running all over the place behind that offensive line. But like I said last week, super hard to win in Lambeau if you're not the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers are going to win at home here. Eddie Lacy actually showed up on the injury report this week for an ankle injury, so it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. I think without Eddie Lacy running strong, their offense is okay. With Eddie Lacy, their offense is really good. With Eddie Lacy running, it really takes a lot of the pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. It opens up the play action. You got to have a running game. Even though it's a passing league, you got to have a running game. Eddie Lacy is the key for that for the Packers. But I still look for them to win at home against the Cowboys. Next game, we've got Falcons at Seahawks. I talked about this game a bunch already. Seahawks are going to win. We're at home. Come at me with your high-powered offense, Falcons. Seahawks don't care. We're coming away with the victory. Should be a fun one. Should be close. I'm excited for the Seahawks to, go to 4-1. I'm ready for that. Should be a good game. Sunday Night Football, there's Colts at the Texans. The Colts scraped a win out, but they're still relying way too much on Andrew Luck. And they need some pieces around him. And obviously that's not going to happen mid-season. But it's going to remain the story until they can get some pieces around him. And he is so expensive and such a cap hit for the next few years, it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do. You got to have a smart general manager, and you have to draft really well to get the pieces around a high-priced quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward with them. I like the Texans at home. I like what Bill O'Brien is doing there down in Texas. Texans at home against the Colts. Monday Night Football, Jets at Cardinals. These are some teams that have kind of lost their way. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not the answer at quarterback. And the whole offseason they spent trying to get Ryan Fitzpatrick back for a number that they wanted. And he's like, no, I want this number. And they kind of compromised in the middle. And he leads the league in interceptions right now. He leads it. You can't turn over the football in the National Football League. It's all about the ball, as Pete Carroll would say. So I like the Cardinals here, even though Carson Palmer, I think, is in his twilight. We should see Carson Palmer and not Drew Stanton. Yeah, you watched the quarterback play in the 49ers-Cardinals game, and it was awful, Drew Stanton and Blaine Gabbert. So I don't think the quarterback play is going to be that much better in this game. I think the Cardinals have a better defense, and that's what gives them the edge, along with their home field advantage. I think they win on Monday night, especially coming off a long week. They played Thursday night, now they're playing Monday night, so that's a long week of rest and practice. I think Cardinals will win at home on Monday night. That's all the games I have for this week. That's all the topics I have for this week. It's been a good one. It's been a fun one. I'm excited for Seahawks football to be back. Remember, you can tweet your questions. You can send your questions to @Neutral Zone Northwest on Twitter, or send them to Neutral Zone Infraction Northwest @gmail.com. Comment, like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends. We're having a lot of fun here. Let me know your feedback too. I'm all eager for telling me how to make the show better for all of us, because we're in it together. We're having a lot of fun. We're talking Seattle sports. Have a good week. And as always, thank you for listening.